Yeah, it's great to see so many faces, familiar faces this morning. Thanks for coming out I guess it's still a spring morning here in Guelph. It's feeling a bit chillier than it was yesterday. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here in Guelph with so many supporters. And I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, the Adirondwan, and the Anishinaabe peoples, and that we're on the Treaty 3 lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. I want to reaffirm the Ontario Green Party's commitment to the truth and reconciliation process. Let's be clear. Ontario is facing a housing crisis and a mental health crisis. It's getting harder and harder for people to find an affordable place to call home. It's forcing far too many of our neighbors onto the streets and into encampments. It's leading to increased stress on our shelter systems, rising levels of anxiety, depression, substance use, addiction, and drug poisoning are all tragically on the rise. And these two crises are linked. According to estimates from the Canadian Mental Health Association, 25 to 50% of the people facing homelessness in our communities also have a mental health condition. Both the mental health crisis and the housing affordability crisis are at a breaking point. And unfortunately, the old line parties have failed to put forward the solutions to address these two crises. We need solutions now. We need to act now. We cannot afford to wait. And that's why I'm so proud to announce that the Ontario Greens have committed to fully funding the construction of 60,000 permanent supportive housing spaces with wraparound mental health, addiction, and other supports over the next decade. By investing in permanent supportive housing, we can address both the mental health crisis and the housing crisis at the same time. Mental health professionals are clear. The lowest cost and most fiscally responsible way of helping to improve people's lives is to provide them with stable, safe, affordable housing. In fact, every $10 invested in permanent supportive housing saves $21 in other public service costs, from healthcare to criminal justice to social services and emergency response. That's what fiscal responsibility looks like. And so I say to Doug Ford, no more license sticker gimmicks that take $1.1 billion out of our systems of care, which unfortunately both the Liberals and NDP also supported. Let's be about earning people's votes, not buying their votes. Let's be about investing in caring communities and having the financial resources to make those investments. It's the right thing to do for Guelph. It's the right thing to do for Ontario. As Dr. Bouzeret from the University Health Network has said, we need more doctors writing prescriptions for housing. And the Ontario Greens are here to ensure that we have the financial resources in place to deliver that housing. Because everyone in our community and in our province deserves an affordable place to call home. And that's why I'm so proud of the work that's been done right here in Guelph, where all three levels of government have come together with social service agencies, advocacy organizations, and private sector to put forward permanent supportive housing solutions to address the homeless crisis that we're facing in our community. And I want to see those solutions funded here in Guelph and in communities across the province. And so I want to close with a direct message to Premier Ford. On Thursday, your government will deliver a budget. And if you are truly serious about addressing the housing crisis and the mental health crisis that we're facing in this province, your budget will deliver the funding that the Ontario Greens have committed to to building 60,000 permanent supportive housing spaces in communities across this province. With that, I'm happy to take any questions, and we'll begin with questioners who are here present right now.
Thank you. I'm Adam Donaldson from Guelph, POLITICO. Can you just say, for the record here, if housing is a human right, and if housing is a human right, haven't we completely violated any sense of human right with the way housing is established right now in Ontario?
Yeah, absolutely we have. We've failed people in this province by failing to build the housing that people can actually afford in our communities. And that's why not only have the Ontario Greens committed to building 60,000 permanent supportive housing spaces, but on top of that, an additional 100,000 deeply affordable homes that people can rent to address the crisis that we're facing in our communities. And what is so infuriating for me is not only will that provide the housing people need to deliver on housing as a human right, but it's also going to help government save money, improve people's quality of life, and improve the vibrancy and vitality of our communities. So it's a win-win-win, and that's exactly why we're calling on the government to make the investments needed to build the housing that people need and can afford.
Following up on that, I don't think anyone would dispute the need, especially people who are aware of what's going on in Kitchener right now with a brand new homelessness encampment. 60,000 supportive housing units are desperately needed. There's a market there. If you have a lot of money, you can play in it. Are we at risk of missing, I know it's an actual phrase, but the missing middle, people who could afford to buy a house but can't in these hyperinflated times? Like, how can those people be helped to be able to get a house?
Yeah, so the Ontario Greens housing affordability strategy, which some have called a masterclass plan in delivering the solutions Ontarians need, has shown how we can take on rampant speculation in the housing market to cool prices, so housing is attainable and affordable, especially for a whole generation of young people wondering if they'll ever be able to own a home, let alone be able to afford to rent an apartment. We will create the zoning changes we need in our communities to build gentle density and missing middle housing in a way that protects our farmlands, our wetlands, stops urban sprawl, and creates more housing choices for people in our community. So things like duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, laneway housing, tiny homes, secondary suites, along our transit corridors, missing middle, a purpose-built rental that's affordable for people. All of that is absolutely necessary, but I also want to be clear that in addition to working with the private sector on zoning changes, in addition to driving speculation out of the market, we need government to step up to the table and deliver deeply affordable housing. In the mid-1990s, both the provincial government and federal governments got out of funding housing. And the housing crisis has been getting steadily worse ever since then, and it's reached a breaking point now. And that's why the Ontario Greens will put the money on the table to work with co-op and nonprofit and social housing providers to deliver the affordable housing we need so people can continue to live in the communities they love. Okay, I think we're ready to move online.
Thank you. We'll now move to any Zoom questions. So anyone on the Zoom, please use the raise hand function or message in the chat and I will call on you. Looks like we have a question from Wyatt Chart. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mike. So obviously you mentioned the budget that's coming up on Thursday. I mean, obviously a lot of people are speculating, given how close it is to the election, that this will, largely be what the PCs campaign on in the upcoming election. I mean, how do you, as opposition MPPs, make sure that, this budget can be turned into action and not let the PCs use it just for campaign promises?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Wyatt. And, one of my commitments that I made during the 2018 election and continue to make is that I will always put people before politics. And for the government to use the budget as a political tool, and I know the previous Liberal government did the exact same thing, is just wrong. There are so many nonprofit and social service agencies across Ontario who we are 1 month into the new fiscal year and they have no idea what kind of funding they're going to receive. Like, how do you plan? How do you work with your staff? How do you guarantee services to the people you serve, many times some of the most vulnerable in our society, if you don't know what your budget's going to be? And so for the government to literally change the law to make it legal for them to do something that they made illegal, which was not to deliver the budget before the end of the fiscal year, is just wrong. And so, you know what? I'm going to continue to campaign on putting people before politics and holding the government accountable when it fails to do that, like it has with the highly political way in which they're putting forward this budget.
And so you're in Guelph today, and obviously, you won it quite strongly in the 2018 election. I mean, how do you, take the success that you won in 2018 in Guelph and, turn it into being able to elect more Green MPPs across the province? And is there anything that you can learn from your campaign in Guelph that you would recommend other candidates also apply to their campaign?
Well, I think Guelph is a green and caring community and a very progressive community. And I think we need to export more Guelph to the rest of Ontario. And so that's exactly what our campaign will be doing. I mean, obviously, I'll be campaigning hard for re-election in Guelph. And I'm quite excited about the strong slate of Green Party candidates all across the province. And I think Ontarians, as we look to the future, recognize that we have to address the climate crisis. We have to stop Doug Ford's sprawl agenda and build livable, affordable communities. And we have to address the healthcare capacity needs, especially the mental health crisis we're facing in Ontario. The Ontario Greens are leading with real solutions to these problems to build the Ontario people want. And I'm confident we can elect more Green MPPs to provide that leadership at Queen's Park.
Thank you. Just a reminder, if there are any more questions, please use the raise hand function or message in the chat. Give it a few seconds. That looks like everything for now.
Great, thank you everyone. I appreciate you joining us today. And I just want to reiterate the Ontario Greens' commitment to ensuring that everyone in this province has an affordable place to call home, in a community that's livable and affordable, and that provides the wraparound mental health, addictions, and other supports our most vulnerable neighbors need. Because we know that that's the best way to improve their lives and to improve the lives of everyone in our communities. Thank you. Merci. Woo.